the Great Australian Lives podcast with Craig Willis for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives.
My guest this week loves to scuba dive, play tennis, cricket, go to the races and even skydive. He's an author, a mentor, an award-winning advocate, indeed an inspirational character. All this after he was blinded in a schoolyard accident at the age of 13. He started his working life in a factory testing light globes and then was inspired to learn, and learn he did, meeting a tutor who encouraged him to move into tertiary education. It opened up a whole new world for him, leading to his current role with Blind Sports Victoria, and you will hear how that came into being. He's certainly not one to sit around. He is indeed one of the most active people I know, and it was hard enough for him to find time for this interview. When you hear his story, you'll understand why I'm in admiration of what he's achieved. I'm sure will achieve in the future. I am very proud to call him a close mate. Stay with us as I catch up with the indefatigable Maurice Gleeson. Maurice Gleeson, welcome to Great Australian Lives.
Thank you, Craig.
Going back to your youth, you had an accident in a schoolyard. You went blind. That must have been a terrifying experience at your age, about 13?
That's right, yeah. Well, it was a terrifying experience, but however, for some reason, and I'm not sure why, it didn't appear to be traumatic. I didn't go into any shock or anything like that. I think there's several reasons for it. One, I think it might have been so dramatic that I was in this total denial that this has actually happened to me. So I subconsciously think that this is not going to be forever. The other reason why is I had such wonderful parents that loved me very much, and I didn't want to cause them any more pain or grief that they were already going through. So I didn't actually openly show this emotion or, I didn't want to cause them any more stress.
I mean, that's a terribly unselfish way of looking at a tragic accident. But when you think about it, Maurice, in this day and age, if it had happened then, would you have had your sight restored?
I may have. I think with modern technology, in actual fact, when I had the accident, I had surgery, and they did bring the sight back. After the first lot of surgery, I brought the sight back. They took the bandages off, and I was able to read and all that. And then about 4 days later, when they asked me to get out of bed and go to have the shower, the retinas tore away a second time, which they couldn't restore. Even though I had further surgery, they weren't able to restore it.
Maurice, you were terribly brave at that age.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure why it happened. And it's interesting, Craig. I actually don't have any vision at all. So people often say, it doesn't matter whether the light's on or sunshine or anything like that. There is no vision, which is, thank goodness, it's a low percentage that people have no vision at all. And there are certainly a percentage, but I happen to fall into that category.
My guest is Maurice Gleeson. This is Great Australian Lives for Tobin Brothers, celebrating lives. So, Maurice, that's a heck of an adjustment to make at that age. How did you cope as the years went on? You're getting into your teens, things are going on around you in your life, but you had to cope without any vision.
It was difficult, but one of the greatest privileges I've ever had in my life when I look back is I went to the School for the Blind, which was St. Paul's School for the Blind in Kew, and having go there, which was a boarding school for me from Monday to Friday, there were so many other kids there, which I would perhaps call them peers, who had vision loss, either blind or partial vision, but they had multiple disabilities, from cerebral palsy and hearing, a whole range. And at first it was very daunting because I've never come across anybody with a disability before. And at first it was very daunting because I wasn't used to it. But one of the greatest privileges I've had is to see these people, these other kids, and some of them didn't live beyond the age of 8. And so subconsciously or consciously, it made me appreciate life and appreciate even though you have no vision, but I am very grateful for what I do have.
Well, I suppose it works to that adage, doesn't it, that no matter how bad you think things are going, there's others who are suffering a lot worse.
Well, I think so. And look, each and every one of us have journeys. We all have a journey. We all have issues that we've got to deal with as individuals. So I always acknowledge that. And I think somebody, I don't know where it comes from, that I have this ability to, my first 28 years of my life were very, very difficult. Apart from losing my vision loss and my younger brother losing his vision loss as well, which is unique to have two members of the one family, but also losing my parents and my other brother all died suddenly. And I'm now 28 years old. I've lost my parents, who I love very much, my brother, who he died at 22. They were incredibly challenging years, and, you know, I struggle with it, how to cope with it, because none of them I had any warning. So it's not as if they were ill or, you know, expected. They just died. And however, Craig, what did happen, I decided that I would not give in, and I will be determined to survive and have a fulfilled life. I would not allow this to go under, because I didn't want to end up in some psychiatric place. So it was my sheer determination, and with people helping me, of course.
You're 28, you've suffered that tragedy of losing your mum and dad and a brother. What prompted you to move forward? And I know you're saying that you were determined to then make something of your life, but it would have been a real challenge for you.
It was a challenge, because after I lost my vision, and that even the St. Paul's School for the Blind, which was a wonderful experience, but at the age of 17, the principal of the school, who was a Christian brother, who I had a high regard for, but he said that I could not further my education. So he felt education wasn't for me, that I should go out and find employment work. And the only work that I could find at the time was a factory work. So I ended up working in a factory nearby in a suburb of Broadmeadows, and Thorn Lighting, and of all things, as a process worker, just a very good task. But one of the tasks was, which I find quite ironic, in quality control, like a blind person was doing testing of the globes, whether they were met the qualifying standard of so I used to have to test the globe. So if they were warm, they passed the test. If they were no warm, they were judged. So that was one of my tasks in this factory job I had. And so I was there, and I kept on thinking, I must be able to do higher education than what I'm currently doing. Surely it must be. But, when you're young, you believe what the professionals tell you. And so I did one year in the evening at a local high school. I did it in English, and the novel that we had to review was Clockwork Orange. And so I did that. And I thought that I did reasonably well at the end of that year in the evening class. I still work as a process worker. And I said to the teacher, what do you think would show my further education? If you could do pottery, piano tuning, or basketry. So I never going to be any good at any of those. So that was the advice I got. And a bit of a setback. And then later on, I again took up a course at RMIT called Tertiary Orientation Program, which I think is over VicCal. It was sort of preparation for, it would have been HSC in those days, equivalent. So I did that, and halfway through the year of studying, a student counsellor came to me, or asked me to come and see her, which I did, and she asked me why was I doing this course. And I said, well, just trying to improve my education. And she believed in me, and she said, Morris, you should be doing tertiary level. You don't need to do this course. You're far advanced. And I thought, I couldn't possibly do that. I wouldn't be up to it. No, you're entering as a mature student at a tertiary level. And with her encouragement and support, and I did go on to study behavioural studies, become social welfare worker, and then I've done 3 or 4 different other tertiary level things in my year.
You are unbelievable. My guest is Morris Gleeson. This is Great Australian Lives. You did all that wonderful tertiary study, bettered yourself, but then the world of sport seemed to attract you. How did that all come about?
Well, an organisation, I was employed as a social welfare worker with the Association for the Blind, and when I was offered the position, when I finished my behavioural studies, I actually didn't want the position. I didn't want to work with people who are blind because I thought it would be stereotyping. And so when I did my work experience placement or study, I actually chose other organisations. One was a drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre, and the other one was an aged care facility, because I just wanted to not lock myself into a limited area. So I chose these other areas to work in or study, which was a great success for me. But Blind Sports Recreation Victoria, it was named differently in those days, was established. And a few years later, my brother Nick, he was the previous president of this organisation, and he was getting married, going to move in Sydney, and about 30 years ago, he said to me, Mo, would you fill in my role for 6 months? That's all it would be for, and then, that's all we need, somebody. So I said, reluctantly, I said, oh, you sure? Yes. So I actually filled in for 6 months, and 30 years later, I'm still in that role. still role. And I'm always believe, if the organisation is growing and developing and we're going forward, I wouldn't be, but we're growing a lot over the last few years, and I'm very proud of the organisation. I have wonderful staff. I have a dual role. I'm the CEO as well. So it enables me to meet with all various levels of government and corporate sector, volunteers. And I consider myself to have a privileged life. I'm very fortunate.
Do you have a favourite sport? Now, I know you've played in many. I know you love scuba diving.
I do.
Yeah. And you went skydiving once. I don't think you'll ever do that again from memory.
Well, you're absolutely right. Nick and I, we had a fundraising activity called Run and Jump. So we ran up the Rialto building. At the time, it's probably the tallest one in Melbourne. We ran up there in the morning. In the afternoon, we did a skydiving. And Nick landed right on target. I landed about 7 k's on a farm, where the farmer had to come out with his ute to take us back to where we needed to go, among cows, etc. No, look, the skydiving was a good experience. No, I wouldn't do it a second time.
Morris, you're a great advocate for people who are visually impaired. Does society in general do enough to assist people in that state? I know that we have accessible lifts and accessible tram stops and signs in Braille, things like that. Are we doing enough?
I think as a society we're much better educated today. I am a bit critical of all levels of government, and it doesn't matter whatever political persuasion. I think I would like them to be able to support our organisation or similar organisation with recurrent funding. We get funding, and are very appreciative. But they keep on. We just every 2 or 3 years we got to keep reapplying for it. It's a very competitive. When you see program, you see people gaining so much from our program, then suddenly either the funding stops or we have to come up with new initiative. I just find that incredibly challenging, and we're not talking about a huge amount of dollars. We're not talking mega millions of dollars. I just think I wish government would have more recurring funding for it so we can continue to deliver, because we're constantly talking about mental health. Everybody has certain degrees of anxiety and issues, but isn't it better to prevent people going down to depression by offering them programs which and is proven time and time again by the various awards that we've received over the years to prevent it? And I think there's value for money if governments would commit more on a regular basis.
They couldn't have a better advocate than you. Morris, we've been mates for a long time. It's a privilege to know you, and I really appreciate your time on Great Australian Lives.
Thank you, Craig, for the opportunity. Thank you, listeners, and I wish each and everybody the best journey they can have in their lives.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of Great Australian Lives for Tobin Brothers, celebrating lives. You can download the show from the Listener app or 3mp.com.au or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to Great Australian Lives with Craig Willis for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives.